Jackie, raise your hand. And Michael, oh, Michael's way down here, I lost him for a second there. They're gonna be in the audience, so we're gonna go back and forth between questions from the audience and questions that were submitted online. So if you want to ask a question, raise your hand, and either Jackie or Michael will recognize you, and you'll, because of the setup of the theater, you'll have to stand up, go to the aisle, and they will have the microphone over there. Make sense? Great. Okay, let me do these introductions. Our first panelist is State Senator Jeremy Moss. Senator Moss previously served as the youngest ever elected official on the Southfield City Council and has since been elected to the Michigan House of Representatives, serving as Democratic Caucus Whip, and now serves as the President Pro Tempore of the Michigan Senate. Senator Moss led the implementation of Proposal 2, which expanded voting rights to include 9 days of in-person voting before Election Day, easier ways to sign up and track your absentee ballot, required drop boxes, and more. He successfully added sexual orientation and gender identity to the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act last term to outlaw LGBTQ discrimination. He is also leading the charge to expand transparency laws so you can access the most inside records from the governor and the state legislature. Next is Oakland County Commissioner Brenda Johnson. Commissioner Johnson is serving in his second term on the Oakland County Board of Commissioners and is the youngest county-level elected official in Southeast Michigan. He is the chair of the Transit Committee, overseeing Oakland County's $70 million transit budget, and is also the chair of the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations and vice chair of Economic Development. He also sits on the board of Acorn to Youth Innovation Mini of the Acorn to Oak Youth Innovation Mini Grant Program. His accomplishments include the creation of the Turtle Woods County Preserve, achieving universal transit access in Oakland County, and the first in the National Student Loan Program with Savvy available to every Oakland County resident. Before joining the county, Commissioner Johnson served as the political analyst in Spain with the United States State Department, as a national security analyst for now Senator Alyssa Slotkin, and he also serves as Chief of Staff for Michigan State Representative Samantha Stekeloff. Commissioner Johnson. Next is Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel. A former criminal prosecutor and civil rights attorney, Dana Nessel is now in her second term as Michigan's 54th Attorney General. Throughout her tenure, AG Nessel has staunchly defended the rights of Michigan and her residents against the trespasses of the federal government. She'll be here to tell us about her recent work in the department. Please welcome Attorney General Dana Nessel. And last but not least is Congresswoman Haley Stevens. The Congresswoman was born in Rochester Hills, Michigan. Both of her parents are here, which is a beautiful thing. And she graduated from...
And they're OU grads.
And they're both OU grads. That's right. She graduated from Seaholm High School in Birmingham. She earned a master's degree in social policy and philosophy and a bachelor's in political science and philosophy from American University. Before being elected to Congress, Congresswoman Stevens served as the Chief of Staff to the United States Auto Rescue Task Force, the federal initiative responsible for saving General Motors, Chrysler, and 200,000 Michigan jobs. Congresswoman Stevens sits on the House Committees on Education and Workforce and the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, where she serves as the ranking member of the Research and Technology Subcommittee. In the 118th Congress, the last Congress, she was appointed to serve on the new United States House Select Committee on Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. On these committees, Congresswoman Stevens serves as the leading voice for Michigan's best-in-class manufacturers and workforce, increased investment in critical research and development, and solutions to address real issues impacting kids in schools, including gun violence prevention, school nutrition, and full IDEA funding. Ladies and gentlemen, Oakland County's Congresswoman. All right, let's take our first question from the audience.
Hi, I'm Michelle Barish, and thank you all for serving and helping us. My question is probably the one that a lot of people in the audience have. With things that are going on with Doge and with the President and Elon Musk, can you tell us what you're doing to help protect us?
Well, thank you, Michelle. How many of you have that question? What are we doing to stop Musk? I'm raising my hand too because I'm just as upset. I'm just as angry. I'm just as frustrated at this assault on our government, a government that all of you pay for, by the way, from your incredible hardworking tax dollars. And I'm gonna level with every single one of you in this incredible audience right now. What is happening with the actions of Elon Musk in the Treasury, in our agencies, one that hasn't even hit the public yet, which is in the Social Security Administration calls that I was getting yesterday, is wholly and wildly unacceptable. It is outside the bounds of our Constitution, and as a federal lawmaker, I will not stand for it. The Constitution that I swore an oath to, that supposedly the president swore an oath to, needs to be upheld. Checks and balances are absolutely essential. And I'm obviously part of Article 1. Article 1 that codifies our House of Representatives and our Senate and appropriates and authorizes the dollars. This is why on day one, some of you may or may not know this, but when Colleen was introducing me as someone who worked on the U.S. Auto Rescue in the Barack Obama administration, that was at the Department of the Treasury, right? It was in the Treasury Department. And so in those first 10 days, when Elon Musk and his rogue team get access to the Bureau of Fiscal Services, the wires, the information, the taxpayer data, I can rightfully say that I was a part of an initiative that actually was bipartisan, that was part of the Main Street effort of stabilizing our economy during a time of real crisis. This is when General Motors and Chrysler were truly staring liquidation in the face. Chrysler, that's located right around the corner from where we are right now. So many jobs were on the line, and it wasn't just, it wasn't a bailout, right? I mean, you had Ford and Honda and Toyota coming to us in the Obama administration saying, don't let them liquidate. There was a program that had been passed into law called TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program. It was lots of taxpayer money to stabilize our economy, to stabilize our home market, to stabilize what was going on in the financial services sector, although those guys still need to get their acts together, if you ask me. And a lot of the mess of Wall Street caused the mess of the Great Recession. But the point I'm making is never once do we ever think about accessing the wires, accessing the taxpayer code, accessing your personal information. And so that is why I stood with our leadership in the House, and I've introduced a bill called the Test to Stop Musk, that is to put up the guardrails so that somebody who doesn't have the proper security benefiting from federal dollars, there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there, and we've had almost every Democrat sign up on this bill. And all we're saying is we need 3 people on the other side of the aisle who have some common sense, who also are uncomfortable with what's happening. And guys, it's not just the Treasury. It's everything going on. And it almost feels, I don't know how much news you're absorbing, and I know it's really head spinning to absorb the news. And that's because that is what they're doing right now, is they're pulling on the tapestry and they're unraveling the rug of our government. And we don't have certainty right now. And that's just not acceptable. I mean, here we are in Michigan, and Colleen, I know there's probably a lot of questions on this, and I want to answer them, because we got tariffs that are going to be proposed. You have the CEO of Ford saying if they put tariffs, 25% tariff on Canada, out of nowhere, outside the bounds of Congress, that's going to blow a hole into our auto industry. We have worked too hard to have that kind of stuff happen. So look, as someone who's in the 4th term of this job, I've got a couple of things going for me as a rep, as your rep. And that's my vote and my voice. And the fact that all of you have shown up here today, please keep showing up. Please keep leaning in. Please keep making phone calls. Please keep chirping. Keep on the ear. This is our government, and I still believe in it, but what is happening right now is wrong. With that, we also have our Attorney General here, who's another branch in some respects of our government. The courts, the law, the other co-equal branch of government. And the things that Dana Nessel, it's not just that she's my friend, okay, which I am always very grateful for, but the fact that she's my Attorney General, all of our Attorney General, she's leading the court briefs to stop these firings, these illegal firings of people who are providing services. I mean, who fires the few people that are working in the parks, for the love of God? So Nessel, I want to pass it over to her because she's doing some really important stuff, and give her some time because I want you all to hear what she's doing and how she's doing it. Thank you.
Inviting me to attend. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to the public a little bit about what we're doing at the Department of Attorney General. Look, when I ran for this office initially, it was during Trump's first term, and part of what I was seeing was that the most effective way, many times, to fight back against trespasses by the federal government against the state of Michigan and the people of the state of Michigan was to initiate lawsuits against the federal government. And not everybody has what's known as standing to bring a case, but typically, not in all circumstances, but in many circumstances, the state attorneys general do have standing to protect the people of their states when there is some sort of injury or harm that is inflicted upon the state of Michigan or the people of the state of Michigan. And in Trump's first term, I served for the last 2 years of that. We filed many such cases, and we were successful in over 80% of those cases. Either because we won those cases outright, or in some cases it just, there was a restraining order or a preliminary injunction that was put into place, and the cases were continuing to be litigated, and the harm was mitigated because those policies never went into effect. And then when President Biden took over, he repealed many of those harmful policies. And I thought, that was a success to me because, again, those policies weren't just illegal, but they were incredibly harmful to our state, and I would argue in many cases all of the United States. But sometimes I feel like maybe that effort was too successful because people forgot about just how harmful some of these proposed policies that never went into place actually were. So with the re-election of Donald Trump, and of course us knowing exactly what the plan was, because he put it in writing, right? It was Project 2025, so we knew what to expect. So many of the attorneys general got together and looked at what those proposals were and started to evaluate in cases where we knew what was going to happen, what kind of litigation could ensue depending on the set of circumstances. And here's what I have said repeatedly. I unlike Trump and many of his supporters in the 2020 election, I fully acknowledge that Donald Trump won the 2024 presidential election, and in fact, he won this state. But it does not mean that he can promote his policies and put them into place without any legal restraints. Every president in the history of our country, all the way back to 1803, Marbury v. Madison, has had to account for their policies to the federal courts in the event that there is an allegation that they have violated the law. And so what I say is this: if there are two sets of circumstances that occur, one is that the policies are promulgated in such a way as to violate the law. Could be federal law, could be the Constitution, could be the Administration Procedures Act, could be many different tenets of the law. violates the law, and two, if it is harmful to our state or our state residents, then I will take action. And so we have done that from Trump's very first day in office. We've done it repeatedly, and we'll continue to do it again when these policies injure the people of our state. So just to review some of the cases that we filed already, right out of the gate, we had to file on the birthright citizenship executive order, where Trump decided that using his Sharpie, he would enact an executive order that, for all intents and purposes, would override the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. Now, as Representative Stevens alluded to, there are actually three branches of government. One being the executive, which of course the president's part of. The second being the legislature or Congress, which seemingly, with the Republicans having majorities in both the House and Senate, they've completely abdicated their authority to check the executive branch. The third, though, is the courts, and that is when the Department of Attorney General comes into play. So we filed right away a case on that birthright citizenship effort because it was harmful to the state. It would account for some 6,000 children being born in the state of Michigan annually that would essentially be stateless in that event. They would have no country, and we would lose out on millions and millions of dollars, whether it be, money for education or for medical care for those children or foster care in some events. Right away, within hours of filing that case, the Reagan-appointed judge issued a temporary restraining order, said it was the most flagrant violation of the Constitution he had seen in over 40 years on the bench. So that executive order was stopped in its tracks, and I can't envision a set of circumstances under which it actually becomes lawful. We next had to file a case involving a memo that came from the Office of Management and Budget. You might remember this. Came out one evening, and the next morning, virtually all of our federal programming dollars were frozen. For Medicaid, for Head Start, for FEMA, for Meals on Wheels. The number of programs are endless, and I want you to remember this fact. The people of the state of Michigan and our businesses, we pay well over $30 billion a year in federal taxes. And that comes back to us in the way of these federal programs. But they suddenly froze that money, and we, within 24 hours, myself and all the Democratic AGs had filed a lawsuit essentially saying we pay a lot of money in federal taxes and we want our money back. So, on that matter, we were immediately granted a TRO, and the court ordered the federal government to unfreeze those assets. Now, many of the programs were reinitiated, but not all of them, and actually we are still having problems with FEMA funding that goes to the Michigan State Police for emergency sets of circumstances. So we just filed last night another motion to enforce that action so that all the funds would be unfrozen. Again, this is money that was appropriated to our state from Congress. It was done legally, it was done with a majority in both chambers and authorized by the President of the United States. Unilaterally, Elon Musk did not have the authority to do that. We next filed a case involving the National Institute of Health. I was very proud to have Michigan leading this effort. Again, on a Friday evening, suddenly we were told that there would be a dramatic reduction in the grants that, again, have been carefully negotiated by grantees, including the University of Michigan, Michigan State, Wayne State, the Karmanos Institute. This is money that goes for medical treatment and medical research. $226 million frozen overnight, and countless jobs, and of course the research that would be stalled in some cases. research that they would have to abandon altogether. So we filed that lawsuit on a Monday morning. By that afternoon, we had a restraining order, and by a couple days later, the NIH issued a letter to all the grantees saying, just kidding, we are going to provide these funds in accordance with those contracts that were negotiated. And then shortly after, we filed another case again, very proud to have Michigan leading this effort along with New Mexico and Arizona, where we sued Elon Musk and sued Donald Trump over the marauding of Doge through the federal government.
Somebody had to do it.
Essentially pillaging his way through from department to department, agency to agency. And what we allege is that this is a massive violation of the Appointments Clause, which essentially says that if you are going to be, firing workers, if you are going to be terminating government contracts, if you're going to be selling government property, you have to have been properly appointed to oversee that agency by the president and confirmed by the Senate. And who confirmed Elon Musk to head any of those agencies? No one. Who here voted for Elon Musk? No one. So we filed that lawsuit. What the court said in regard to that, and here's what we asked for specifically. We said Elon Musk and Doge has to get out of all of those agencies. They don't have the authority to do any of the things that they're doing. We want them to stop firing workers. We want them to rehire the workers that have been fired, and we want them to re-implement all of those contracts and those grants. And by the way, no more downloading private information onto unsecured servers, and anything you have to destroy it. So those are the things we asked for. The court, this was in the DC District Court. The judge did not grant our immediate TRO. She said that we were very likely to succeed on the merits, but in terms of the harm that was incurred by the state of Michigan, she said, you are likely to incur lots of harm. It just hasn't happened yet. It hasn't manifested yet, and it has to be imminent. So we are going, I would argue that's not the case, that we already are suffering various harms from this, but we are doing expedited discovery. She said we are likely to prevail on a preliminary injunction that is going to be coming up. We're starting a discovery now. I think we'll be successful. My biggest concern is all the damage that will have been done in the meantime. But that's not going to stop us from trying our hardest, and I do believe that we're going to be successful in that case. We have filed numerous amicus briefs, and I'll try to make this short, but in terms of the termination and defunding of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, just in the last year, 92,000 complaints from Michigan residents, many of them that were successfully resolved, billions of dollars back to consumers from businesses that had taken advantage of consumers in our state. The refugee ban. These are people who are in our country legally, who have been carefully vetted by the United States government, in some cases come from Afghanistan, who are there helping our troops. And in one fell swoop, to stop the refugee programming and all of the various agencies that have been assisting them, understanding that that's 2,500 people a year, at least in Michigan, people who pay over $218 million in state and local taxes and add $1.9 billion to the Michigan economy. So a TRO was granted in that case. The ban on transgender people serving in the military, something that neither Elon Musk or Donald Trump has ever done. Over 8,000 active duty members, 150,000 transgender people who are veterans or who are currently serving in the National Guard all around the United States. There is a hearing coming up on that case. And then various cases where we were supporting federal government employees who've been fired. There are a number of those different cases. There's the deferred resignation case, the fork in the road case, you might remember. Just, I think it was last night, there was another TRO that was granted in terms of the firing of probationary workers, people who have either been on the job for less than 2 years, or in some circumstances, they've been there for decades and decades. They're supervisors, but they just got promoted to a higher level, fired. And no type of introspection into what do they do? Is there anybody to replace them? Who's gonna do that job if they're not there? Are they essential workers? And so there are courts around the country, thankfully, that are evaluating that and saying this is incredibly harmful to our country, and we don't know how to mitigate that damage because it is so substantial. So these are just some of the sorts of things that we've done. I have a long list of other things that we've done that were not official court filings. Sometimes there are times that we just have to send out letters to sort of inform those stakeholders, whether it's informing educators about the radical indoctrination EO, and like, that's not the law. That's just a piece of paper that the president signed with the Sharpie. You can't really just defund all the schools in the state of Michigan because they teach about the Civil War. Or healthcare providers, who are providing medical care under the laws of the state of Michigan. You don't just change state law and change federal law with the swipe of your Sharpie. That's not how the law works. And again, that's why we have 3 co-equal branches of government. Donald Trump is the duly elected president of the United States. He is not a king. Of the time that we're here, but I want people to understand that we are working really hard. And I will say this, and I know that Senator Moss has some things to say. 40% of Michigan's budget comes from federal dollars. And so this is significant. I know you guys are negotiating a budget right now. I'm really afraid for our state and what you guys are going to do, not knowing whether or not these dollars are going to be provided or not in the future.
So I'll be brief because I know we're on question 1. But I saw a lot of hands go up, and I know that these will answer future questions as well, and future concerns that you're going to express to us. Donald Trump is taking a 49-48 election victory, national victory, and causing an overreach. Everything that he's done in the last 30 days has been an overreach, right? But the reality is, do know that he's facing a backlash. You are the backlash. We've heard a long list from our Attorney General of what she is doing in her official capacity to push back. But look what things have billowed unofficially. Matt Gaetz is not the Attorney General of the United States. Those tariffs, which would have disproportionately caused harm to Michigan and Michigan's industry, were delayed. The freeze, the federal freeze, which really did cause disarray for a week there, especially on essential programs like Head Start, that was unfrozen. That's because what he's doing is unpopular. And I will tell you, what you're doing right now is the most important thing you could be doing. You are showing up. We all belong in the spaces where decisions about us are being made.
Right.
I know a little bit about that from this past week. I'll tell
If you don't know, you should look it up online.
I'll tell you that this one story I think is really indicative of what we all can do. As you know, there was a state representative from here in Oakland County who, again, took a 49-48 victory and caused an overreach and put forward a resolution in the Michigan House to overturn the marriage equality decision. Nobody voted on that on their 2024 ballot. So I showed up to his press conference and sat right in the front row because if you're going to talk about me, you're going to do it right to my face. I wasn't violent, I wasn't antagonistic, I wasn't irrational, and he was the one who ended up looking like a buffoon. So that's exactly the strategy that we need to take moving forward. And I will say this on both ends. If you are represented by a Republican, obviously we're all Democrats, but if you're represented by a Republican, show up and tell your story. We are seeing that happen all around the country where Republican members of Congress are facing a backlash from some of these overreaching decisions. But also, if you agree with us, if you support us, we also need to hear your stories. We take those with us, and we advocate for you in the halls of Congress, in the Attorney General's office, in the County Commission, in the state legislature. We share it with our colleagues. You are arming us with information from the district on how some of these policies are going to harm real people in our communities. So showing up and being present is absolutely the antidote to what's going on right now.
So, I'm gonna take a couple questions, Commissioner Johnson, I promise you I'm gonna get to you. But, you know, if you know us, our office, you probably have talked to people in here, our brand is responsiveness. We answer the phone, we talk to you. Okay, so Jackie, why don't you grab somebody from your side?
My name is Fred. I live in Commerce Township. We have a lot of appointees from Donald Trump. I've got a Health and Human Services guy that's never met a brainworm he didn't like. We've got an Attorney General who vowed she would never weaponize the AG's office, and the first day started saying, okay, go over after these FBI agents. When I watch the news, I watch senators and congressmen wringing their hands over this. But that's all I ever hear is, oh, we're talking about it in our caucus, and we're talking about it in our school. How do you hear squat of someone standing up and saying, stop this shit? That we all take a position, and including you, Haley, and including Alyssa, we just can't watch the ball come barreling down the hill and hit us out of the way.
Thank you for that great question.
Well, thank you for that, because it really captures, I think, what has been going on with the frustration. They're appointing people, they're getting confirmed, and you mentioned RFK Jr., who is very frightening.
No, you mentioned the brainworms.
Yeah, you mentioned that. But RFK Jr. is very troubling. I mean, this is someone who is a conspiracy theorist at best, now overseeing all of our health. And I don't believe he should have been confirmed. I know he wasn't confirmed or voted on by many in there. They obviously have J.D. Vance breaking it down, but you're bringing up a better point, which is not just, oh, are we talking about it and bobbling along while they're putting people in the place who are concerning. Jeremy nicely mentioned that Matt Gaetz didn't get the AG nomination, but Pete Hegseth did. And they're firing generals. And they're firing very qualified people on false claims of something that they call DEI, which I will say in full, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it's also talent. They're taking admirals, they're taking a woman who was in charge of our whole naval fleet, who spent the bulk of her career at sea, and just... What's that? What's this? Oh, you know, okay, yeah, okay, you know that, great. So, here's what's going on, guys. We have a budget that we've got to pass. We've got a government that needs to be funded. And that government, it needs to be funded by March 14th. That's in 2 weeks. Excuse me?
Okay, let the Congresswoman answer, please. Well, that's what she's going to tell you.
Oh, exactly. I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, at the end of the last year, we had a major bipartisan bill, that, you know, was making its way to the floor. It was all hunky-dory until a poison pill was put in it, and it was still split among the Democrats. I'm in charge of my vote. What I did with my vote in December around a major bipartisan bill, and I've passed bipartisan legislation before, right? I have passed, you know, the CHIPS Act, this and that. I said, I'm not giving you my vote because I know the government we are about to go into with a House and a Senate and a presidency all under one wing of party control. So if you want to work with Stevens, you're going to have to give me something. As we are heading into the funding of our government, what I believe we need to do, sir, is use that as leverage. I don't think we can get rid of these cabinet appointees with that, but we can at least stop some of the worst and most egregious pain that is happening. And that is what we have to do. We cannot give them our votes. We cannot compromise at the expense of our values, and I am not doing that. And you can look up my voting record from that major bipartisan piece of legislation, which was a pay raise for the troops, and it was all that stuff. I said, I'm not voting for it, because you put it, not because I don't want a pay raise for the troops, but because they put a poison pill in there. And we could see what was coming. We could see what they're doing. So look, Donald Trump has signed some of my legislation before in his first time in office. He actually signed an equity bill that I did called the Building Blocks of STEM Act. He doesn't give a whit right now about signing any bills. I don't know if you guys know this. We don't even have a White House liaison right now for the House of Representatives. If you want to come to Washington, D.C. and get a tour of the White House, there's no tour to get. There's no one to call. There's no one for me to even talk to about legislation. So, sir, when I go back next week, and by the way, I've had 2 committee hearings since I've been sworn in, 2. I used my opportunity on the floor of the House, which I believe is the sacred space of our democracy. I'm not, I'll do a news show if they ask me to go on, but turn into C-SPAN. Watch the debates. Watch us blocking the rules that get passed on the floor of the House, because we are doing everything we can to stop that. And I go into my committee hearings. One was, I'm on the Space Committee. We got this competition about the moon. We have another one on workforce and workplace safety. I said, how could we even be talking about this stuff when you guys in the dark of the night are voting to strip away everyone's Medicaid? How do we do that? How are we even talking about going to the moon? And I'm going to tell you something else to the folks in the back. I couldn't fully hear what you're saying. My roommate is Congresswoman Brittany Pedersen from Colorado. She gave birth 4 weeks ago, and she flew across the country where people aren't getting vaccinated with her newborn to vote against that bill. So please, give us your ideas, sir. Please. All of you, chime in, call. I'm trying to respond to the DMs. My staff, we answer every call. Half the time, we're breaking down with you because we care so much about what is happening to you and our country. And by the way, this design of Congress and the reps only we now represent 800,000 people. We are outside the bounds of our Constitution. All right, the House is supposed to be the will of the people. Well, when you're almost at 1 million people and they only say you're allowed to have at max 18 people working for you, that's a design. That's part of the squeezing of the government and this notion that a limited government is going to best serve you, and that is not correct. I personally believe we need to add more members to the House of Representatives. I'm working on legislation on that. We need to have free and fair districts, and we need to do every darn thing we can. Who knows, today's Saturday, tomorrow, we're working every day. Ask Nessel, we're on the phone, all of us are. Brenda, did you want to finally chime in here?
No, and thank you for the opportunity. I think all right. I'm a county commissioner. I cannot stop Elon Musk and Donald Trump from doing anything. What Oakland County can do is prepare for chaos. And the other thing that I will say is my district is about 67,000 people. That, I think, is what a congressional district should be about, not 10 times that size. I am able to talk to more people and have a much better feel for what is the situation on the ground. And I will say this to your question, sir. It's not sexy, but the answer is every day we need to be more engaged, and that's not just doing this. I mean, this is fantastic, but also what are the next most important elections? It's this year, it's municipal elections, it's running for appointments on your planning commissions and your zoning boards. If you want to fix the housing crisis, it's not going to happen in Congress, it's not going to happen in Lansing, it's going to happen on your boring local zoning boards. It's going to happen on your library boards, your city councils. That is where the front line of democracy is, and I will walk doors with you to make sure we've got really good, talented people who care about democracy, care about not banning books and the architecture of bathrooms. So that is what I will say is the most important thing we can do. Additionally, in Oakland County, I mean, I'll say anticipating chaos, it's hard to do, but whatever we can do. All right, so here's the other thing. Sorry, I'm distracting myself. The other half of your question is a math problem. It's just plain and simple, and it's not fun. We have a supermajority in Oakland County, and we do get to talk in our caucuses about what to do about X, Y, and Z, and we can make a decision, and we frankly don't have to care about what the other side of the aisle wants or says. We do because we're nice people, and we often work across the aisle to find a lot of great solutions. I love all the Republicans that I serve with, and I know that I'm blessed to be able to say that. But we don't have to, because at the end of the day, we have a supermajority and we can just do things. And that is not something that Representative Stevens is able to say. And I just want to say, like, the math at the end of the day is black and white. And if we want to empower the other members of this table to do things, specifically in Congress, we have to make sure that there's a majority willing to push back against Donald Trump. And that just is not there right now. I'd like to get there hopefully in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to take a couple more questions from the audience if we can. Michael, do you have somebody?
Hi, my name is Reese. I've been a federal employee for 20 years. For 20 years, For 20 years, I've gone after tax cheats. For 20 years, I made sure that tax gap was reduced so those federal dollars that we need to pay our bills and to flow back to the states happened. I will be losing my job very soon. And when I leave, I'm not coming back. All of my 20 years is going with me. My colleagues are going to be losing their jobs too. Their expertise is going with me. I know what data they now have. You people should be scared to death about what can happen. What I, in 20 years, and nobody I work with has violated. That is so protected. That is so against the law, what's happening. So my question, or my statement is, do more. Whatever you're doing, do more. And do not pass that budget. I need to be furloughed for people to understand.
Thank you for your service to our country and all of our federal workers. We don't thank them nearly enough, and if we didn't realize before how important they are to the daily workings of our government, I think we do now. I will say this: there are cases that have been filed specifically against the Department of Treasury for the release of information in violation and contravention of federal law. I had a conversation with our state treasurer at the State of the State the other night. I spoke to her and I spoke to the woman who is in charge, the director of DTMB is the name of the agency that oversees all of our cybersecurity for state government. And they both said to me that in order for a contractor to work with our state government to get any of the types of information that DOJ got, it would be the most extensive vetting process you could possibly imagine that would go on for months and months and months before they would be able to access that kind of information. Information that DOJ and the merry band of 19-year-old, 22-year-old racists could immediately access with no oversight and no vetting of any kind whatsoever. And yes, we are scared. We're scared for ourselves, we're scared on behalf of all the people that we represent. But we are trying, and we do have a case right now that is pending in the Southern District of New York, headed by Tish James, the Attorney General of the state of New York, specifically involving the Department of Treasury and specifically involving those acts. But I want to say that, I mean, we are working tirelessly to try our best, given this set of circumstances. But this is where I think this comes in so important. We talked about, of course, there is not a majority in Congress that is willing to stand up to Donald Trump and to all of these rogue actors. But, and this is my question personally for Rep. Stevens, you have just to geographically in a few directions from you, from the 11th Congressional District, you have the 10th Congressional District, which is represented by John James, and you have the 7th Congressional District, which is represented by Tom Barrett. These are both, they're both swing districts, I think it's safe to say. You know, my question is, since you only need a couple votes in Congress in order to stop some of the worst legislation from passing, how do we all encourage these two of your colleagues from doing the wrong thing and standing with the people that they represent instead of just kowtowing to the President of the United States? And I look at those two individuals in particular, they both are military veterans. Right. And yet yesterday, when we had the President decide that after all of these years we're going to switch sides, and now instead of being on the side of democracy and Ukraine and NATO, instead we're going to stand with Vladimir Putin. How, perhaps the most embarrassing day that I can remember in American history in my lifetime. Congressman James and Congressman Barrett took an oath in their military service to protect and defend the United States against enemies both foreign and domestic. I would argue that we're facing both right now. How do you encourage your colleagues to stand with the people that they represent instead of standing with these men who are existential threats, not just to the United States of America and our democracy, but to world peace? What do you do?
Well, first to our federal worker, I've got my marching orders, and I hear you loud and clear. We cannot pass government funding until you get your job back. Until you get your job back. You shouldn't be on the firing chop block, and we want to talk to you more, by the way, and I'm telling my colleagues who are in the state legislatures that get people in these federal cases to report to my office. We're obviously very much working in coordination with the state of Michigan on these matters as well, and what's happening with these illegal firings. But that is very important. You know, I'm home today, tomorrow, back to DC on Monday. This is exactly why we have these sessions. And folks, I know it's out of your time too to come here in person, but we also do these on the telephone, and we're doing them regularly so you can dial in. And we also continue to encourage you to call my office. Please call my office. We answer, we return the call. But in terms of what our Attorney General just asked me, I just want to share, I took out my phone because I want to share a message that I sent to one of my colleagues. I said, hello, a state representative sent me this text message. This is in your district. Maybe you can do something. Here's the message I received. Good morning. I just received word that the Army Arsenal in Warren is going to lay off 400 workers next week. These are specialized engineers building out protection systems for our armed forces. These engineers won't be able to be replaced or their work offloaded onto another employee. If we fire these 400 employees, American armed forces will suffer the most. No response. No response. Right. So to the point about if we're gonna fund the government, we have to fund it with these jobs. We have to fund it with the assurance. And folks, this is, and I'm gonna tell you something else, because you're all trying to figure out ways in which you, does everyone here live in the 11th? You all might, it's okay if you're not, but, and you're welcome to be from, look, you can, whether you're a member, a constituent or not, I'm a federal voting member, and I'm voting for you in Washington, all right? I take the nation's votes. So in terms of how we're gonna interact with these other folks, I mean, it's a very peculiar thing, because we go onto the floor of the House, and again, this is why I want you all to turn on C-SPAN and watch the debates and watch the committee hearings. That's, as Brendan Johnson nicely said, planning zones and board commissions and things like that. When you turn into your local city council, please turn into your government. Not just MSNBC or Fox or whatever. Tune into your government. Watch your government in action. Because I also want you to see, here's the thing, we all collect on the House floor. Now, when we're on the House floor, you have a chance to go up to somebody and say, what are you doing? I brought my Constitution. The day after Musk started, I brought it. I waved it out. I went over, I'm not looking for a viral moment, okay? I'm just looking for sanity. I went over to the other side of the aisle. I said, hey boys, remember this? What's going on? But here's the thing that's happening, guys. They're making us take quick votes. They're making us take quick votes, so we're not getting the time together. And so for all of you, and I want you to think about the positive, the negative. Yes, the ferocity. Yes, your anger and your sentiments and your frustrations need to be heard by everybody. I'm collecting it and I'm taking it back with me. I think we do have some members of the media here too, so that's helpful. But the other deal is I want you to think about how to push on these other ones who Dana was mentioning alongside. And maybe it's through enabling leadership. I don't know if they're afraid. I don't know if it's not common sense. Again, Stevens, in moments of crisis, look with the CHIPS Act. I mean, I was standing behind the president with D's and R's as he was signing the CHIPS Act into law to solve our semiconductor shortage. There can be ways we can work together, but they might be scared of the guy in the Oval. I don't know. We need to enable them. We need to say it's okay. Take that vote. Don't pass that budget until we get the federal workers placed. Follow Stevens. Follow Nessel. Follow, the people who are actually doing this. Because it's only 435 of us there. And I know that might sound like a wish list, but we've got to be creative. We've got to reimagine government. We haven't amended our Constitution in over 50 years. We haven't expanded the size of Congress in well over 100. You're paying for this system of government, and it needs to represent and work for all you. Kyle, I know, why don't we take 2 questions? I want to get some of these people in the middle. I know some of these other folks have been raising hands. We got this room to 1:30, is that right?
I want to go, but Commissioner Johnson's got to catch a plane.
Okay.
So he's going to bounce, but he's not leaving because he doesn't like you. He loves you. Okay, Tash, do you have somebody?
Thank you,
Jackie's
Brenda.
turn. Jackie?
No holding, okay. First, I want to say thank you.
Oh, it's the monthly testify.
We're okay.
Sorry, thank you. I really wanted some background for this question. No, not really. Thank you so much for showing up, for creating this space for us to talk. Thank you to everybody else who's here. I do have some weird ideas, creative ideas that might be helpful for communication from our representatives to the people. During COVID times, we had Fauci who was reporting what was happening every day. Maybe there's a representative from the opposition, from the Democratic Party, that is like, this is what happened today, everybody. This is what you can do. So, I don't know who would be that person or who could be that person if there's a need at the state level, the county level, the federal level. And then another weird, potentially creative idea is, can we create a shadow cabinet? We don't have somebody, the flu shot meeting got canceled. Yeah. There's all kinds of FDA, there's the bird flu outbreak. There's all these things that are happening. Is there somebody, a trusted medical somebody we can turn to who can be our HHA person who's helping us and guiding us?
I'll lead off on that first point. I'm going to let you all in on a little secret. You are more powerful messengers in your neighborhood than we are. Your neighbors know you. Your family knows you. So when you see something that we share, it is even more valuable when you share it in your feeds. The only way to combat disinformation is with information. So if you follow us and you see C-SPAN or you follow our social media accounts, share, put it in your feed. Let people who follow you who maybe aren't as political, who are somewhere else at 1 p.m. on a Saturday, let them know what you're up to, what you heard, what you saw. So I totally agree, we have to be better messengers, we have to be more consistent, we have to be more forceful, but you are the best way for that message to be amplified. And we're gonna need it in the next 4 years, really in the next 4 days, whoever knows what's gonna happen, in the next 4 days, you are the ones that are gonna be the better messengers in your community by uplifting the things that you see from your government officials that you know that needs to get out there and needs to be put into our communities.
That's great. And the creative ideas are welcome. I think you're right, we need to,
We couldn't hear that.
And we're gonna have to use the microphones, especially because the sirens are.
I'm sorry.
Park Rangers.
Oh, Park Rangers. Yeah.
They're doing it. They're kicking ass.
Okay, great, that's great. Thank you.
Share these on your feed.
I just want to say in regard to that, I think, the national outrage is starting, right? But when you talk about, for instance, park rangers, right? I mean, we're already having an issue. Our economy in Michigan is sustained based on recreation and tourism in Michigan, right? So, the mass firing of these park rangers, what is it gonna mean for Sleeping Bear Dunes and for Pictured Rocks and for Isle Royale? These are, these parks, these national parks bring in countless millions of dollars to the economy all over the state of Michigan. And we are already in a place where they're gonna have to start, canceling reservations because they are not going to have the park rangers to be able to open the park or to allow the regular number of visitors to attend the park. And, that might seem like that's not the biggest deal in the world when we have planes falling out of the sky, but it sure as heck means a lot to the people of the state of Michigan. But that's the thing, we need not just all of you who showed up today, who cared enough to come on your Saturday afternoon and make your voices heard, but you gotta talk to all your friends and families and neighbors and fellow churchgoers and whomever and let them know really what all of this means. And one of the things that I know that, this is something people don't think about, but we don't have an explosion of sea lamprey in our Great Lakes right now because they've been contained for decades and decades. But guess what? That program just got cut. I don't know if you ever have seen what a sea lamprey looks like, but it's like out of a horror movie. It's an eel that has 20 sets of teeth, and it sucks the blood out of 40 pounds of fish every month. It's going to devastate our fishing industry. And plus,
Brought to you by Elon Musk.
Yeah, right. So when you talk about the indiscriminate programs that are cut, nobody's looking at these programs to say, is this a program that, is being duplicated someplace else? Is it really that important? Is it necessary? Is there some redundancy in government? Or is it gonna cause us to have millions and millions and millions of sea lamprey throughout the Great Lakes and have a devastating effect on our economy here in Michigan and in all the Great Lakes states? These are the kinds of things that are going to be happening, and I think irrespective of who the people in your life are, whether they're Democrats, whether they're Republicans, whether they're independents, I guarantee nobody voted for sea lamprey.
No. Okay, Michael. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
I just want to add something, and then I have to bounce and catch my flight. But to your point, and I'm going to say, I'm going to take some responsibility here. I am not the best communicator. I am the only one on the panel without personal staff, and it is hard to do everything. I'm just going to say that. I've also grown unfond of social media over the last several years, so I try to stay off that. It's been better for my mental health. I would recommend it to all of you. But one thing, we're all elected Democrats, so I will say, The DNC did take note of that exact thing and needing to be better about communicating our everyday achievements. So if you follow the DNC on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, they do publish every day. There's a What Democrats Across the Nation Did Today. And I found that helpful, and it gives me hope because I see that, people are doing stuff all over the place. The other thing that I would say is, I'm sure you all know there's been a horrible consolidation of the media industry. Newspapers have been bought by billionaires and they've been told that they can't publish X, Y, and Z. So there are press releases that all of our chambers put out, that all of our offices put out on boring government websites that are good and helpful and are, I think, good news. And I can't tell you how many of them get picked up by no one. No journal prints them, no paper prints them, and I say, why? And it's just because it was crowded out by other things that the billionaire wanted to talk about that day. So if you have some time, look at the press release for all of our caucuses, for all of our offices. There's some good stuff going on that a lot of newspapers miss. Thank you all.
Okay, let me just say this. We're going to go until 1:30 because there's too many questions and we want to stay. But if some of you have to leave, we understand that. Mr. Tash.
Yeah, thank you guys for inviting me into this room. Haley Stevenson, I support you. You were fired, and putting out those fights in D.C. Thank you for that. However, you also have Dana Nessel on the stand, and I don't get the opportunity to talk to Dana Nessel. I see that she's a Democratic elected Attorney General, and you guys are just jumping up and down because she's filing lawsuits. What else is she supposed to do? File lawsuits. Okay. My gripe with Dana Nelson is that I am what some people call a returning citizen. And when Dana Nelson was running for office, she came to one of our events in Detroit, and she asked for our support. And she said what she would do once she is elected. I work in the criminal justice sphere, trying to transform the corrupt criminal justice system. And Dana Nelson has opposed us on every turn. Every turn. She is the loyal opposition. I talk to representatives and senators, and they all say, Dana Nelson is the one who stops this. So I know that you got your next job in the front of your mind, but just from grassroots organizations who do criminal justice reform, we will never support you on anything you do. And we're going to be the loyal opposition everywhere you go. Thank you.
Well, if I could just respond to that. First of all, we've worked really hard on expungement fairs all around the state of Michigan. My department has processed probably 10 times as many as expungements as any prior attorney general has. So we've worked really hard on that. But if you're talking about the fact that I've stood firm on truth in sentencing laws, so that when you tell a victim that on their rape case, their assailant will be getting 10 to 20 years, it really means 10 to 20 years. It doesn't mean 5 years, it doesn't mean 3 years, it doesn't mean 2 years, that we're not lying to victims. And so I have never said anything differently. I will continue to support truth in sentencing, and I think it's important that it be maintained as the law of Michigan. The voters passed that into law, and so I continue to support it.
Okay, Jackie. Sir, we're going to go to the next question. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman Stevens, for as much as I appreciate the energy that you have shown in wanting to fight for Medicaid, getting Elon Musk out of our government, and fighting to ensure that we even have a future, I unfortunately do not share that enthusiasm. Because I do not believe in how genuine you are in your words or actions. I say this because I know that all it'll take for you to stop fighting for us, your constituents, is a big fat paycheck from APAC. When the districts were redrawn in 2022, you moved out of your original district and city to run against Andy Levin, leaving the spot open for the taking for John James, who was an absolute joke of a candidate during his runs for Senate. That in the midterm could have been being easily, and we would still have more seats in the U.S. House. Since becoming the representative for my district, you've rarely held town halls in your district with this very district being in the 10th congressional district, or genuinely communicating with your constituents. The only reason why we still have you in office at the moment is because we know that the alternatives in the November elections are far worse. But in the primary, you have not shown anything that truly says that you are worthy of the position, my vote, or my respect. And before you try to respond with, well, how about you run for office or anything along those lines, I ask that you recognize that right now, you are the one with the job that we are asking that you do. Instead of wasting time trying to prop up spineless cowards like Hakeem Jeffries, try actually paying attention to your constituents and their worries.
Okay, sir, let's let the Congresswoman answer the question. Let's take.
This is a question.
I love my job. I do. I love my job, and
It's not a question.
There's 300 people here, sir. We're gonna get to a couple more questions.
I have a question.
We're gonna.
Actually ask the question.
Okay, sir, thank you so much for your opinion. Here you go.
This is not a campaign. This is not a campaign.
Okay, respectfully,
Said about not being
if you'd be kind enough to
and
calm
not
down,
being
sir,
adversarial.
be very helpful.
We
Please.
want to communicate. This is not a dialogue. This is just you yelling.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let me finish my actual question.
Go ahead, Michael.
Hi there. So I just, real quick, to clarify the woman across the room, that shadow cabinet and the sort of having comms go out, I want to second, that's a great idea. Not to say nice things about Andrew Cuomo right now, but what he did out of New York is the model that I really think we need. Like, we need a telegenic person with national presence who's out there breaking through the lies and is someone who we know that we can trust. To your point, to be able to actually share something consistently in our feeds and not just be like, blah, lots going on. And then the other thing I wanted to address a little bit more is like, where do you think Congress has investigatory power here? You know, you're on the select committee on like China competitiveness, and I have, as an ex-tech worker, so many fears about what Musk's role with China is. Like, where do you think Congress has the space to start investigating and elevating the pieces of information that will ultimately change minds and get voters to realize how absolutely corrupt all of this is?
Yes. I love the idea of the shadow cabinet. I really like that a lot too. And look, I think there's something we could do where we could, if you remember during COVID, we had different experts using their voices, and I think we should be elevating those experts. A lot of times when I've had town halls and community conversations, like Dana Nessel sitting right here and Jeremy Moss, I've sought to bring experts to the table and uphold their values. I think this is very serious when it comes to health issues in particular. I'm on the workplace subcommittee for safety, and it's frightening. I mean, where and how are people going to get the right information? There's a small group who believes, in some of these conspiracies and some of these issues. Well, now they're running the show. So we've got to uphold our doctors. I think we've got to look at foundations and investments into medical research, and obviously we've got to hold the line on the budget. In terms of the investigatory authority of Congress, remember when I was talking about my 5 minutes on my committee hearing? So if I was in the majority, I only need 3 more seats, I'd be holding a gavel, and I could set the hearing. Yeah. And I could talk, and I could say, well, we're gonna have this hearing. Right now, everything comes down from the majority. So we have to wait for them to call the hearing, and then I have to wait in line. And this last one, even though, I'm 4th term, he skipped over me. I thought, buddy, all I'm waiting for is my 5 minutes, and we're here talking about going to the moon, but I actually want to just talk about Medicaid and how you're stripping people's health care away, because how the heck are we going to go to the moon, right, that point. In terms of this notion of transparency and consistency, I just want to be clear with everybody in this room. Again, the makeup of Congress, representing 800,000 people, doesn't belie the direct will of connecting with people in the way the founders intended. What I do to combat that is I show up. I'm in our neighborhoods. I knock doors now. I mean, it's not, I connect in with people. I respond to calls. I try and talk to people who I don't know just to hear what's on their mind. This is the thing that keeps me awake at night. Who's not right in front of my face, who I haven't heard from. So I just want to be clear, folks. There is a major problem with money in politics. It needs to change. Courts need to change it. And Citizens United needs to happen. Again, this is not a political event, but I have been endorsed many times over by End Citizens United. And just on a personal note here, because this is a place of origin for me, and it's actually divided between the 10th and the 11th, OU. Both John James and I represent OU, and I've been very proud to work with them on a bunch of science initiatives over a number of years, particularly with their engineering department and nurses, because we got a nurse shortage, and we got to put grant programs into place to get more people trained into that field. But my parents met at Oakland University. My mom paid her way through school. They started a landscape business. In the summer, that was what they were doing in the summer, and in the winter, the inside joke in my family was that my dad would wake up to the sound of the snow falling because he'd plow. Folks, I'm the American story in this regard. My aunt told me when I was running for Congress, she goes, I never thought someone in our family would go to Congress. And to your good point, sir, anyone can put up their hand and run. We are not kings. We are democracy. We are not, sitting in fiefdoms. I had a 6-way primary when I first ran, and I loved it because we had the whole exchange of ideas. And I run every other year, and people say, I can't believe you have to run every other year, Stevens. I said, no, that's what's healthy for our government. So as long as I do that, you have that commitment for me, and the commitment of transparency and openness and willingness always to listen. I can't promise we're always going to agree. I'm doing my best. I'm proud of some of the stuff I've done. I also want to continue to serve you now in this moment. So do we have time for more?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. We have 12 minutes. Who's next? Whose turn is it? Jacqueline?
Thank you all for being here today. So I think that we can all agree that we're in agreement on what needs to be done. And I think that the Democrats in Congress are showing up with a newborn and everything. It seems like what we really need to do is just get a few people to stand up from the other side. What can we do about making that happen?
We've got to enable them. And I think it's through a little bit of both, which is the pushing and the showing up and the phone calls, as well as potentially the olive branches. I'm going to tell you guys, there's been questions if we could get people to switch parties, and just say, come over to our side. Let's do that. Who are their stakeholders besides their constituents? If you're on the Veterans Committee, how did the group of veterans weigh in on it? But the nature of these legislative bodies, a lot of times, comes down from the top. I am very, very proud that Hakeem Jeffries is the leader of the Democrats in the House right now. He's a visionary leader. He's worked very hard. He was one of our top leaders during the COVID period. Obviously, Nancy Pelosi's still in office, along with Jim Clyburn, and there's a whole collection of, the new, the young, the old, the this. But that's deeply important for us. So let's keep brainstorming on that. I'll tell you, this is the second time I've been in office with Donald Trump in the presidency. And I've often thought, where's that voice of reason? After he lost the 2020 election, it dawned on me that was the most dangerous time in his presidency. It was right after, well, truth be told, it was very dangerous. I was there during January 6th. And it was terrible. Don't ask my mother about it. And my friend Alyssa Slock, and she was the one who told me to hide in my office. Thank God, because then I didn't go to the floor. So these are some of these matters, where, and people, I'll tell you something else, people are quitting. Some of these moderate, they call them Republicans, are quitting Congress because they're getting, I think it's the MAGA extreme is showing up at their house, harassing their families and scaring them. And they just said, I have had enough of this. I've seen this 3 or 4 times since I've been in Congress. Marjorie Taylor Greene put out a call after we passed an infrastructure bill to say that we need to harass the 12 to 13 Republicans who voted for it. So in some ways, what's the inverse of that? Obviously push on them, but also say, hey, we'd like you to come over to the side of standing up for the Constitution, standing up for democracy, and delivering. Did you have something you wanted to chime in?
I'm sorry for making that joke about ordering a pizza for you on January 6th when you were hiding under your desk. So.
Mr. Tisch.
My name is Dina. I live in Commerce Township, Michigan.
We love Commerce. Thanks for coming all the way here, by the way. We had another question from Commerce, and I've done a lot of good projects in Commerce. They're great.
So, you know, my life has been really interesting. I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother, I'm a retired military wife. My husband just retired after 22 years of service. My daughter is a federal technician. She works for the USDA, and she is being terrorized and harangued on a daily basis. I was a teen mother. I did depend on Medicaid and food stamps and cash assistance at one point. I was able to get an education and make over 6 figures. And I look at every step of where I was to where I worked so hard to get. And I have 5 chronic diseases. I work in the healthcare space. I have patients calling me wondering how they're going to get medications, crying. The mental health in this country is absolutely unhinged. And I know that you are our elected officials, but each and every single one of us has a responsibility to stand up. Have we looked into Elon Musk HB1 visa? There have been talks. There have been talks that he dropped out of Stanford, and I recently saw video clips of his brother Kimball saying that it was a gray area. So Kimball says, we were illegal, and Elon says, oh, it was a gray area. Well, what is that gray area? What are we going to do to denaturalize this man and get him the hell out of our country? So I want to, first of all, thank you for representing us, but I want you and the Democrats to give us a directive on what we can do on the streets. How can we volunteer? What can we do to use our voices so that we can get rid of this, I mean, I'm so sad, I'm sick of pale, stale males. We need to get these people out of here. So even if I didn't pay taxes, how long would it take me to be a millionaire? So let's say I made $100,000 a year, it would take me 10 years, right? How long would it take me to be a billionaire? Right? None of us are in the same class as these people, and we're allowing them to make decisions for us? Are we out of our minds?
We need to tax the billionaires. That's the other, we need to tax the billionaires. If we want to talk about government efficiency and paying down our debt and our deficit, we need to tax the billionaires at more of the marginal tax rate than the fire, police, and the teachers. We can start with that, and I hope you keep showing up. Keep showing up. You know, by the way, folks, Washington, D.C. is a drive away. Sometimes I take the drive. It is 9 hours. My favorite thing is when constituents come and visit. It's not always a sing-song, but you are welcome. My office is open to you. The Capitol is open to you. Come. Please come.
Girl, we got your back.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to be the least popular person in the room. This is our last question. I really apologize. Jeffy.
Hi, my name is David. I'm from Ferndale, and I'm independent progressive. And while I would like to echo some concerns that this man and the man down there about the criminal justice reform. It's not related to my question, but I would like to say that you do have my support. And my question is mostly related to Medicare and Medicaid funding. I'm a healthcare worker, and I have some concerns about how that will be funded, because since I work in Detroit, most of our patients are Medicare and Medicaid funded, and if that money is cut, then that will mean that they'll be running budget shortages. And while I don't personally care about their bottom line much as an employee, I do care about mine. And as an adjunct to that, I would also like to say, is there any possibility that any of the three of you could get on more like progressive talk radio or YouTube shows? If you want to see me after, I have some recommendations for you. And because while I would love to believe in the Democratic Party, I also kind of vote for them a little more on the begrudging side, and I would like to see them take more of a left-wing stand. Oh, wow, thank you. But yeah, just...
Thank you. So on Medicaid and Medicare, one, we need to be expanding. So you can see if you're receiving Social Security, you might have gotten an uptick in Social Security, just as you got an uptick in Medicare costs. And one of the edicts that came down from the White House, among the many Sharpie pen actions, was to strip away the lowering of the cost of prescription drugs and allowing Medicare to negotiate the prescription drug costs. So then again, we're back to being outside the bounds of our laws. We passed a law, Congress passed a law, it was called the Inflation Reduction Act. President signs an executive order, that's being all spun up. In terms of Medicaid, it is very obvious, and I'd love to come and see you sometime in your work, by the way, and thank you for chiming in, and of course, any awareness about ways to communicate, we're all ears on that, truly. But we need to be expanding Medicaid. Medicaid has not been touched. They've got these caps on it that are squeezing people. We've had some horror stories, even in our own district and all across the country. And I cannot, for the life of me, figure out why every single Republican this past week, when Brittany Pedersen traveled across the country with her newborn son to vote against this, but every single one of the colleagues on the other side of the aisle voted to strip $880 billion from Medicaid. We should be talking about plus-ups, because why, folks? Who's getting Medicaid? We just heard someone who shared their story about Medicaid. These are young families. These are families in our, with 5 kids. Yeah, and they're not walking a day in people's shoes. And it's a backward ideology. It's not right, and it's gonna blow up our economy. It absolutely will. There are families in our district who are caring for children who will be bankrupt without Medicaid. So part of, again, federal workers are being illegally fired, agencies are being dismantled illegally, they're trying to take away our health care. I'm the one who walked off the House floor and said, yeah, there's elections coming in 18 months, or a little bit more than that. Maybe they're handing it to us, but we can't wait for an election. We cannot wait for an election. We cannot. And look, to this point about mental health, and God bless you for bringing that up. And this is something I've been trying to say, because these guys say, well, we got these gun violence problems because of mental health. And I said, well, why are you causing all this mental health stress then? I mean, seriously. No, this is stress that the people of our beautiful nation should not be put under. You should not be going through this. I don't care who you voted for. And Colleen just took a call in our office the other day from someone who said, I've always voted the other way, but this Elon Musk stuff is out of control. Yeah. We're in a period right now where it's too long for another election. It's not, we're not parliamentarian. And so that's why we gotta be in the Capitol. We've gotta hold the line. I'm working with some brilliant people. I'm not sitting here eating bonbons, folks. I mean, we're working every day. We're holding this. I mean, anyway, we want to have all the town halls. We want to hear your voice. We want you to call. I read your calls. I read the emails. And I even got Facebook on my phone again, because I thought, oh gosh, that only lasted 2 weeks, because there's a lot of negativity, like Brendan said. But anywho, a couple more? No? Yes? No, I know we're losing access here.
What about the SAVE Act? I would really like
No to the SAVE Act. No to the SAVE Act.
Does everybody know?
Thank you.
Congresswoman, can you just give a brief what the SAVE Act is?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, so we just did a press conference that I was invited to, it didn't ambush, with Jocelyn Benson this past week about all of the dire concerns about the SAVE Act, that they're, again, an overreach, using this distraction of non-citizens voting, which is de minimis and is non-statistical, to prevent lawful citizens, legal voters from participating in the process. If you change your last name, you might get purged. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. And I chair the Senate Elections Committee in the Michigan legislature, and we have expanded access to voting. We have reduced barriers to the ballot box, and we've enshrined that not only in our Constitution, but in statute. So in Michigan, we are going to ensure that if you are a citizen, your right to vote is going to be your access to this democracy. We are not going to prevent anybody who has the legal right to express their constitutional right to vote from voting.
So we really thank you all so much for your engagement today, for coming out. You're here, so you're already in touch with us, but stay in touch with us. As the Congresswoman said, we plan to do telephone town halls. We did one about, 2 weeks ago, every 4 to 6 weeks. So keep an eye on the newsletters that come out from our office. If you haven't signed up with us, we have brochures out in the front that you can use to do that. Our brand is responsiveness. We always answer our calls. We talk to you. We cry a lot because it's hard. This is hard stuff. So we're in this with you. We love you all. Thank you very much. The Attorney General would like to say something.
I just want to ask everyone here who knows somebody who is a federal worker who has been affected by these firings, these layoffs, these terminations, if they could contact our department, the Michigan Department of Attorney General, and what we need to know for the purposes of our many lawsuits is, what was your job? What did you do for the state of Michigan or any other states? And now, how is that affecting the state of Michigan? Because we do need to show this injury to the state, not just to the workers, but also to the state. And so please contact our office, give us your information, let us know what issues have been created as a result of that to assist us so that we can be successful in our many lawsuits.
Thank you all very much.